There is a quiet kind of strength that can move mountains, not by thunder, but through patience. Not by loudness, but through understanding. And once you learn how to hold your peace and pour that power back into yourself, the world begins to shift quietly in your favor. There is a silence that hurts, and then there is a silence that heals. The world often confuses the two, but those who have walked through storms without shouting about the rain, they know the difference. They understand that silence, true silence, does not come from weakness. It comes from wisdom. We were told that being silent means being submissive, that those who speak less are often those who lack courage. But that belief comes from noise. The kind of silence I speak of is not the silence of fear. It is the silence of knowing, the calm that lives deep within the soul of someone who no longer needs to prove, to please, or to perform. It is the stillness of a person who has learned the sacred art of protecting their peace. Anyone can make noise. It takes little to raise your voice, to throw your energy into the air, and demand that others notice you. But real power doesn't make a scene. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't shout to be seen. It simply exists. And in that quiet existence lies a strength that does not depend on reaction. There is a kind of dignity in silence that the loudest person in the room may never understand. Being silent does not mean disappearing. It means returning to yourself. It means gathering your energy where it truly belongs. While others chase attention and applause, you chase clarity. While others lose themselves in the noise, you walk through still waters and find you are not lost. You are free. You are steady. You are in control. Some will question your silence. They will try to label it, explain it, and pull it apart. They will call you distant, proud, or cold. But what they do not understand is that your silence is not emptiness. It is fullness, full of thought, full of reflection, full of self-respect that refuses to be wasted on battles not worth fighting. Yes, there will be times when your silence will be misunderstood as weakness. When you choose not to react, not to explain, not to defend, some will call you passive. Let them. Because you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to understand yourself. And understanding yourself is the highest form of wisdom. Silence becomes your refuge when the world grows loud. It becomes a mirror when people try to distort your reflection. In silence, your own voice becomes clearer than the opinions of others. You can separate chaos from truth. You can hear what really matters, the kind of truth that isn't shaped by gossip, pressure, or the need to impress. Silence teaches you timing. It shows you when to speak, how to speak, and most importantly, if something even deserves your words. Some fights don't need your sword. Some insults don't deserve your attention. And when you respond to everything, you water down your own power. But when you choose your moments, your words carry weight. You become unforgettable, not because you always spoke, but because when you did, the world listened. There is no weakness in saving your strength. There is no shame in sitting still while others fill the air with noise. That is not retreat. It is refinement. That is quiet rebellion, kind that does not seek to be seen, but is powerful all the same. We live in a culture that celebrates speed, volume, and constant availability. But not everything needs an immediate reply. Growth, healing, and transformation take time, and they take place in quiet spaces. A seed does not shout when it begins to grow under the soil. The moon does not scream to outshine the sun. They simply become in their own rhythm, in their own grace. So when someone tries to pull you into a storm that isn't yours, remember this. Your silence is not surrender. It is selection. It is strength. You are not ignoring them. You are honoring yourself. Chosen silence is a form of brilliance. It sharpens your thoughts, softens your heart, and guards your spirit. Tells the world, I am not here for noise. I am here for peace. And in a world that thrives on distraction, nothing is stronger than focus. Nothing is more powerful than restraint. And nothing is more beautiful than knowing when to speak and when to simply rise in silence. There comes a time when you look around and realize that giving all your energy, time, and love to everyone else has left you empty. Not because you can't give, but because you forgot that you deserve to receive from yourself first. You were never meant to serve others from a cup that is dry. You were meant to fill that cup with peace, purpose, passion, and only then let it overflow to others. But the filling must come first. To focus on yourself is not selfish. It is sacred. It is honoring the vessel that carries your dreams, your pain, your strength. It is looking in the mirror and saying, I matter too. That is not pride. That is respect. We are often taught that goodness means giving yourself away, that love means sacrifice, that strength means holding everyone else up, even when we are falling. But true love includes you too. It includes your rest, your growth, your boundaries. If it doesn't, it isn't love, it's performance. You don't owe constant access to people who take without giving. You don't need to explain why you're choosing solitude, why you're turning your phone off, or why you no longer answer calls that bring chaos. That's not coldness. That's wisdom. That's alignment. That's self-respect wearing its most beautiful form. Silence. When you begin to focus on yourself, the world may resist, may ask why you've changed, where your energy has gone. It will miss the version of you who always said yes, who showed up even when it hurt, who gave without limits. But you are not here to be who others preferred you to be. You are here to be who you were meant to become. And becoming requires space. It needs quiet. It needs care. When you choose yourself, you begin to see that not every hand deserves to hold yours. Not every voice deserves your answer. Not every invitation is an opportunity. Some are distractions wearing pretty masks. Some are detours disguised as destiny. When you love yourself enough to say no, you start to see how peace returns like a friend you thought you lost. There is grace in choosing yourself. There is healing in saying, I will no longer abandon myself to make others comfortable. Every time you ignore your own needs to please others, you tell your spirit it doesn't matter, but you do matter. You are the beginning of every story you will ever live. You are the soil where your dreams will grow. And if you don't water that soil, nothing will bloom. People might admire your petals, but deep down, you will know when your roots are thirsty. Eventually, it will show. So take time with yourself. Get still enough to hear your own truth beneath the noise. Gentle enough to hold your own hand. You don't have to fix everyone. You don't need to apologize for resting, for slowing down, for starting again. This is your journey, and you have the right to walk it at your own pace. Some will call you distant, let them. Some will say you've changed. Thank them. Growth isn't always loud, but it is always real. And when you grow inward, the world around you starts to reflect that strength. Focusing on yourself is not selfish. It is sacred preservation. In a world that wants you to depend on approval, choosing yourself is an act of rebellion. You are saying, I am enough. I am worthy of my own love. I no longer need permission to shine. Focus on yourself, not because others don't matter, but because you can't give light while standing in darkness. You can't bring clarity while living in confusion. When you start treating yourself as someone worth showing up for, everything changes. The more you respect yourself, the less tolerance you have for disrespect. The more time you give yourself, the more time you gain for what truly matters. And one day you'll see that self-focus was never selfish. It was survival. It was healing. It was holy. Growth is a quiet thing. It doesn't announce itself with noise. It doesn't wait for applause. It doesn't ask permission. It begins softly unseen, like a seed beneath the soil, long before the bloom appears. We live in a world that praises performance. But growth doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the silence after heartbreak. It happens in the long nights when you are alone with your thoughts and tears. It happens when you choose to pause instead of react, when you choose peace over proving. That's where change begins, not under bright lights, but in quiet places where character is formed. There is something sacred about the silence that guards your growth. It is not emptiness, it is presence. It is the space where transformation begins. When life gets noisy, we rush, we chase, we distract ourselves. But when we allow stillness, we finally meet ourselves. And that's where becoming begins. You can't rush a seed by shouting at it. You can't pull on a flower to make it bloom faster. Your healing, your purpose, your growth, they need time, stillness, and protection. They must grow away from the noise, away from comparison, away from performance. Many people quit their growth because they cannot yet see results. They want to skip the quiet stage and jump straight to success. But fruit never grows before the root. And roots grow in darkness, deep and unseen, digging into the hard places. They go where others won't, so that when the time comes to rise, they can hold you strong. If you don't allow that quiet season, you may rise too quickly, too fragile, and fall at the first storm. We are meant to grow in seasons. Some seasons look like stillness, like isolation, like rest. But these aren't dead times. They are sacred times. They are preparation. They are cleansing. They are the deep breath before the rising. You may feel behind because your path is quiet, because no one is watching, because the world isn't clapping. But don't mistake silence for failure. Some of the most powerful things grow unseen. Mountains rise without applause. Trees stretch skyward without asking for praise. They simply rise. So do you. Today's world pushes us to show every step, to prove progress. But true growth doesn't need to be announced. It will show itself when it's ready. And by the time others notice, your roots will already be deep, strong, and unshakable. Let people wonder where you went. Let them question your quiet. You owe no proof. You owe yourself patience. You don't have to be loud to be growing. Some of your greatest becoming will happen in moments so still, so small, that only your soul will notice. Stay there, in the quiet, in the stretch, in the simple sacred work of healing. Let the noise fade. Let the world hurry. You are not behind. You are not missing out. You are doing the most important work a soul can do. You are growing roots. And when your bloom comes, it won't be because you forced it. It will be because you trusted the silence, honored the process, and gave yourself permission to grow at your own divine pace. There is a hunger in this world, one that grows louder with every scroll and every swipe, But the truth remains, peace still belongs to the quiet ones, the ones who choose to grow, to heal, and to rise softly, without noise, but with grace. It is not the hunger of the body, but of the soul, a quiet ache to be noticed, to be valued, to be recognized in the eyes of others. And so many chase that feeling, not realizing it is an emptiness that no spotlight can fill. Attention, like sugar, gives a quick high but leaves the heart starving. The longing to be seen is not wrong. It is deeply human. But when it becomes your food, your direction, your reason, you start to lose who you are. You begin shaping a version of yourself that others can easily accept. You water down your truth to fit into frames and filters. You shrink or stretch to match someone else's picture of you. And in all that effort to be visible, you disappear from yourself. Attention is like a drug, and like any drug, gives you a short-lived high that fades too soon. It feeds your insecurities while pretending to heal them, builds a fragile sense of self that depends on likes, claps, and shares. But when those fade, you start to wonder about your worth. You begin to ask, was I ever enough, without the sound of applause? Sobriety from attention is not simple. It means stepping back from the noise. It means sitting in silence where your only mirror is honesty. Not praise, not comments, not the filtered images people show. And in that stillness, in that pause, you face yourself again. Not the self that gets applause, not the one you present for approval, but the real one that exists when screens go dark and the room grows quiet. The hardest part about detaching from attention is the loneliness that follows. Because for a time, you might feel forgotten. The world doesn't celebrate quiet growth. It rewards visibility. But visibility is not the same as value. And presence is not proved by being seen online. Some of the most peaceful, grounded souls are the ones who stay unseen because they have chosen depth over display. Sobriety teaches you that your worth is not a public vote. It cannot be measured by numbers or attention. You begin to understand that peace doesn't come from being noticed. It comes from being real. You start to find joy in the small, unseen wins. The day you kept a promise to yourself, the morning you woke up and didn't need validation to feel whole, the night you chose rest and quiet over one more post to prove you exist. In that space, your creativity changes. You start to live not for praise, but from truth. You stop weighing your words by their reaction and begin to value them by their honesty with your soul. When you speak, carries weight, not because it's loud, but because it comes from a place that doesn't beg for approval. The world will tempt you again. It will offer another taste, another chance to be noticed, to be praised. But you will know. You will feel the pull in your chest, the restlessness in your spirit. Because once you felt the peace of being enough without the noise, the crowd starts to feel like a cage. You will see others chasing attention and recognize the ache beneath their performance. You will hold compassion, not judgment, because you've stood there too. You've stood under bright lights hoping they'd warm you, only to learn they cast shadows when they fade. You've known the silence that follows applause, and you've survived it. More than that, you've grown through it. Real growth doesn't crave the crowd, it craves connection. First with yourself, then with what's true and lasting, what doesn't vanish when followers fall or trends fade. You begin to want conversations that don't start with, "Look at me," but with, "Let me understand you." You begin to want a life that feels full without needing to be watched. The drug of attention convinces you that more eyes mean more worth. But the truth is, the most meaningful things you'll ever do may never be witnessed. And that's okay, because when you choose freedom from attention, you don't lose your light. You simply stop needing others to switch it on. Boundaries don't always arrive with noise or conflict. Sometimes they appear quietly, wrapped in stillness. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing, not from anger, not from pride, but from peace. When you stop arguing, stop explaining, stop seeking understanding from those determined to misunderstand you, that's not quitting. That's strength. That's choosing calm over chaos. The silence where boundaries grow is not empty. It is full of meaning. It's the silence that comes when you've spoken too many times before. When your voice has stretched too thin, trying to keep others comfortable. It's the silence that says, "This time I choose me, not from selfishness, but from truth." There comes a moment when you see that every time you say yes out of guilt, every time you let someone cross a line out of habit, you teach yourself to live smaller than you were meant to. And in that quiet awareness, something strong begins to rise. Not anger, but direction. Not bitterness, but peace. You don't owe everyone an explanation for your boundaries. You don't need to apologize for protecting your peace. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for them and for yourself is to step back to rest, become unavailable to what drains you. And in that sacred withdrawal, you begin rebuilding the walls that guard your spirit's garden. People may not like your silence. They may feel entitled to your time, your attention, your energy, especially when they were used to your constant yes. But your healing doesn't need their agreement. Your peace doesn't depend on their comfort. The silence that shapes boundaries isn't cold, it's careful. It's the kind of care that says, "I know what I need now, and I won't ignore it anymore." In the quiet, you start to tell what is truly yours to carry from what never was. You begin sorting through old expectations, invisible debts, roles you never agreed to, and with every new clarity, a line is drawn, not to keep love out, to let self-respect in. The beauty of boundaries is not in what they block, but in what they let bloom. When you stop overgiving, you start healing. When you stop explaining yourself to those who don't listen, you begin to hear your own truth again. In that silence, your voice returns, not loud but steady. Tells you what you need. It tells you where your yes is sacred. And it reminds you that no is a full answer. Some will mistake your boundaries for coldness, let them. Some will call you distant or unkind. Let them. Your boundaries are not about them. They're about your becoming. You're not pulling away from life. You're returning to yourself. And from that place, what's meant for you can find you without disturbing your peace. The silence where boundaries are made is a teacher. It shows you who respects your limits and who only loved your access. Reveals which relationships were real and which were built on convenience. As painful as those truths may be, they're needed. Because you can't grow in soil that's constantly stepped on. You can't bloom in a place where your needs are seen as burdens. In stillness, you learn to choose differently. You learn that love that costs you yourself isn't love, it's loss. You learn that protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's sacred. And you learn that no one will honor your boundaries if you're afraid to set them. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just not replying, not showing up, not opening the door. Sometimes it's choosing peace over obligation. You start living less from guilt and more from truth. And as your silence deepens, your sense of self strengthens. You no longer have to shout your worth. You just live it, and the world responds. The peace that follows this kind of silence isn't about quiet. It's about wholeness. It's knowing you're allowed to protect what's sacred inside you. It's realizing your time, your space, your energy, your joy. None of it is disposable, and those who truly love you will never make you feel it is. There comes a time when the crowd moves on, the noise fades, the spotlight dims, and the applause stops echoing in your mind. At first, that quiet feels like loss, like you've disappeared. But if you stay still long enough, if you resist the urge to beg the world to look again, something gentle begins to happen. You start to see yourself clearly, maybe for the first time. Because true transformation doesn't need an audience. It needs honesty. It needs room to break apart the pieces built from fear, approval, and expectation, and uncover what's always been real underneath. Real change doesn't happen while performing, doesn't bloom under pressure to appear perfect. It begins when you stop pretending and start becoming. You'll know you're on the edge of transformation when everything you used to rely on stops working. When your old comforts don't soothe you anymore. When your roles feel tight, small, and scripted. That discomfort isn't punishment. It's a signal. It's life calling you inward. And it's no mistake that it happens when no one is watching. The soul doesn't heal in public. It heals in solitude, needs quiet to see itself again. There's a kind of shedding that comes in that quiet. You begin releasing what you once clung to for identity. The titles, the labels, the reactions that made you feel worthy. At first it feels like loss, but slowly it turns to freedom. Because when you stop performing, you realize you're free to be whole. Not perfect, not polished, whole. It's easy to confuse attention with connection. But when the spotlight shifts, you face what's real. That's when the deep work begins. You learn to speak kindly to yourself without waiting for someone to echo it. You learn to comfort your fears without posting them for sympathy. You learn to grow without turning your healing into a show. The world might call it disappearing, but it's actually returning. You are reintroducing yourself to the parts of your soul that were buried under noise and fear. And in that rediscovery, you find something powerful. Your transformation was never meant to entertain. It was meant to free you. The world tells us to shine, but rarely teaches us how to rebuild in the dark. It doesn't praise the nights you cry in surrender, or the mornings you forgive in silence. Yet those are the sacred moments that shape you in ways no stage ever could. When no one is watching, your questions change. Not how do I look, but how do I feel? Not do they like me, but do I like myself? That change in focus transforms everything. You stop chasing relevance and start seeking peace. You start creating a life that feels right inside, even if no one claps for it. As you grow in solitude, you carry something unshakable, an energy that doesn't need to be noticed. It simply exists. Because when you've faced your soul and made peace with what you found, you no longer need the world's permission to be whole. You're not becoming for them. You're becoming for you. And the irony is, once you no longer seek attention, you become more magnetic. People feel your calm. They sense your balance. You don't speak louder, but your words carry power. You don't display your healing, but it shows in everything you do. That's the quiet beauty of true transformation. It glows without trying. Let the world forget you for a while. Let it turn its gaze elsewhere. Use that stillness to deepen, to rebuild, to root. Because the most powerful version of you won't need to be seen to exist. You'll arrive so whole, so sure, so real, that your presence will speak louder than any spotlight ever could. Let them wonder where you went. Let them whisper. Let them watch as you rise, not with noise, not with display, but with a stillness so deep it commands the room. You don't need to be seen to grow. You don't need to shout to be heard. Stay centered, stay quiet, keep growing.